Welcome to our webinar today about mission ready research, how agencies can safeguard research security while improving research intelligence. Today, you'll be hearing from me. I'm Miguel Garcia, VP of Product at our government funders and nonprofits area here at Digital Science. And I'm accompanied by my colleague Heidi Becker. She is a product manager here at Digital Science focused on our research security products. Let me tell you about what we're doing today. We're going to start by looking at safeguarding research security, how funders and agencies can identify foreign influence risks, screen affiliations, and meet compliance obligations. And this will include a live demo of the product that we've been working on. Then we're going to focus on moving from reactive to strategic, how to scan emerging research horizons and trace the real world journey of funded work from a lab to policy to market. And finally, we're wrapping up with measuring reach and influence in order to understand who engages with the funded research and how it travels across sectors. We'll also have a period for live Q&A right at the end. And throughout this presentation, you will notice that there will be questions popping up in your screen, and we would really appreciate your feedback in order to understand better what interests you and how we can continue to improve these webinars and the products that we're building for you. So let's start. Research leaders are being asked to answer harder questions year over year. Nowadays, agencies and funders are increasingly expected to do a number of things that maybe were not as common for them before. Protect federally funded research from inappropriate foreign influence, understand hidden affiliations and collaboration networks, identify emerging technologies before they become strategic priorities, demonstrate how funded research contributes to mission outcomes, and finally, to connect research investments to policy, innovation, and societal impact. What we've noticed is that research intelligence is no longer just about reporting. It is becoming a strategic decision-making capability. That brings challenges, and these are the kind of challenges that we hope that we're building tools to help you with. There is a traditional approach to these problems that has been breaking down. Originally, we'd be thinking about citation reports, annual reviews, static dashboards, compliance reviews, output tracking, but all of this has been evolving into an intelligence-driven set of tools and framework focused more on research intelligence, continuous monitoring rather than scattered monitoring, dynamic landscapes, risk-informed decision-making, and finally, impact and influence tracking. Now, we've also noticed that there is a growing availability of data. The challenge is really not a lack of data. It's connecting that data into actionable intelligence. And those connections are the ones that we believe that we can uniquely help you with. What we've noticed is that the most effective agencies developed a connected intelligence strategy for research security, for landscape monitoring, for portfolio strategy, and they pair it with impact and influence analysis. Now, how can we help you here? We've also been focused on these four pillars, and underneath each of these core areas, you can see what digital science is creating to support your institution. For research security, we have developed Dimensions Research Security, which has had a new evolution, a next step there that Heidi will very happily share with you all. For landscape monitoring, one of our tools is Dimensions Foresight, which I'll have the pleasure to demonstrate further down. For portfolio strategy, we're going to be taking a look at Dimensions Publications links. And finally, for impact and influence, we're going to talk about Altmetric Attention Digest. So what are agencies asking us these days? For research security, the most common question would be, which relationships present the potential risk? What does portfolio strategy question? What portfolio strategy questions are we getting? Mostly around where should we place our next funding bets? Regarding impact, we're hearing questions around what evidence can we show that our investments really mattered? And on leadership, how do we tell a compelling story? to make sure that we continue to have funding to invest in the most impactful research. So handing over to Heidi to show us a bit about safeguarding research security. Heidi, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Miguel. Very happy to be speaking to you about the latest and greatest in research security from digital science. Before I start getting into the nitty-gritty, I wanted to talk a little bit about our approach to research security because I think it's an important grounding. So first of all, we obviously want to leverage Dimension's enormous database of available research information along with the data enrichment that's done to that data. We understand the relevant data points for research security, specifically in the context of rapidly changing regulations in the space. We want to continue to allow for flexible risk assessments based on need. One of the things I always say is risk assessment is very context dependent, so we need to be flexible. We also want to provide transparency. So that means for everything that we surface in terms of relevant data points, you can look at the underlying records yourself. You can dive deeper. You can validate any claims that we're making in our products. We also want to provide auditable review documentation. So things change rapidly in this space. We want to make sure that the reports that we provide to you are suitable for audit. They provide enough detail and again, those underlying records so that in the future, when a look back is done, you're prepared. You're prepared to talk about what you did at that time. We also want to be a responsible partner to both the academic community and our government partners. What does that mean? We know this is a high stakes area. There are not only careers on the line, but there is very important research at stake. We all want to advance research and we don't want to take this lightly. So that's what we mean by being a responsible partner. We also want to make sure that we can integrate with your internally held data and workflows. So we know there are many pieces to this puzzle, and we want to be able to provide the data to you in a way that helps you merge that with your own data. And also, always, we want to drive innovation based on extensive both user and regulatory research. This is a point of pride for us, this slide. We are very proud to be the leading research security solution of its kind for both research institutions and government agencies. We provide insights that all of our client partners are using on a daily basis. In addition to our clients, you may have seen some of these reports and investigations before, but Dimension's data has been underpinning many of these reports, testimonies, as well as congressional investigations. Just to briefly touch on the content in Dimensions, and this also kind of informs what Miguel is going to talk about later on with respect to our other products. Dimensions is a massive database. This is, I'm not going to belabor every number on this slide, but just to give you a sense of the volume of data that we can leverage for these tools. This is as of April, so we already have more. It's hard to keep up. But I've highlighted publications, clinical trials, patents, and grants here because they form the backbone of what we surface in Dimensions Research Security. You'll also see that we link this content together. So if you've ever looked at a publication record versus a patent record, they're very different, right? So how can we make those types of data easier to navigate between and connect? I did want to especially talk about publications. We are very fortunate to have good relationships with many publishers, which allows us to index the full text. And I'll talk about in a minute on the demo why that's important for research security, especially. We also wanted, as I talked about earlier, in terms of being able to integrate with systems, we do have a platform, which is what I'm going to show you today a little bit about, but we also have an available API. So this allows you to take the relevant data points from Dimensions Research Security and again, integrate those data points into your own systems. If you're doing high volume reviews, let's say you have thousands of grant applicants, we built the API to help you do the due diligence that you need to do at scale. There are two types of risk assessment that we address with the research security product. So one is organizational risk assessment. This is used, I would say, pretty extensively by our academic customers as well. And this is kind of giving you a 30,000-foot view of your institution. So you're not looking at a specific person, but you're trying to identify areas at your organization where you may be exposed to potential risk that you're unaware of, right? So do I have faculty or researchers that are using affiliations that are connected to restricted entities that haven't been disclosed to you? Are your researchers collaborating with restricted entities or countries of concern? Again, most researchers are doing research, right? They're not looking up at the BIS entity list while they're conducting research. That's some guidance that you can provide to them, for example. Also, just looking at where is funding coming from on publications where your organization is involved. Likewise, for co-PIs on grants, for example, or clinical trials. And then lastly, looking at kind of IP leakage. So is there IP leaving your institution that's being patented by entities in a country of concern or restricted entities? So really trying to help you identify those areas of risk to be more proactive. Researcher reviews, I would say this is the overwhelming use case for Dimensions Research Security. So this allows you to look at the researcher's affiliations over time, right? Especially where they may be connected to restricted entities or in countries of concern, wanting to verify collaborations with and funding from, again, these restricted entities or countries of concern. And we provide pretty extensive information on co-author networks as well. So not only who is this researcher, but who are they working with? And then also looking at their related intellectual property filings. All of this we provide in one place so we can help you make this due diligence much more efficient. Okay, so now we're going to show you a little bit of Dimensions Research Security on the new platform, which I'm very proud of, obviously. I'm going to focus on a researcher today, simply going back to the being a responsible partner. This is sensitive information, so I'm going to use a very publicly well-known use case to walk you through the platform features. But you'll see right off the bat that there are two ways in from the platform. So we are looking at searching for either researchers or organizations. The main pivot that we made with the new platform is we really wanted to make it more workflow friendly. So as Miguel was talking about earlier, moving from a dashboard where you're signing in every day, you can't save anything, to a genuine workflow tool. So as part of this tool, what we allow you to do is, then this is going back to the being flexible part of bullet point that I was speaking to earlier. We have multiple, you can save and deploy multiple different review configurations according to your need. So you'll see I have a ton here because obviously I use this a lot, but they are on both the researcher and organizational level. So you can look at and set parameters for your review, such as you want to identify specific countries of concern. We have a number of lists that we incorporate into Dimensions Research Security. So, and more are on the way next week. So there are a number of lists. You'll see they're not just United States lists, but global in reach because we have clients around the world, and a number of other parameters that you can set, including whether or not you want us to flag keywords of interest related to talent recruitment funding programs. And again, you can set this on an organizational or researcher level, and you can set default review configurations as you need to or want to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop into a researcher profiles, and I will start looking for a researcher. This is a very well-known, well-publicized research security case. You'll see that in addition to names, we allow you to search using a number of different parameters. So any affiliation they may have used in the past on different types of records that we index in Dimensions. If you happen to know their Dimensions ID, you can plug in any document in Dimensions, and we will give you a list of relevant collaborators. If you have a publication DOI, you can enter that. You can search by ORCID. So there are a number of ways to get to the right person, which is particularly important when you're looking at, for example, a common name. Once you've defined your search, we're going to give you results that with, again, a number of indicators to help you identify the right person. So we're going to give you their current affiliation in our system. If there's an ORCID, you can look, again, you can search by that, but we'll also surface it here, give you an idea of their active range. So when did they first publish or get a grant, for example, up to their most recent publication or award, and then in which fields they're publishing in. So all of this is designed to help you identify the right person. I'm just going to switch to another screen now because I have it preloaded. Whoop. So this is the profile. Once I've clicked into it, you'll see I have a default review configuration applied. So we're looking here and you're telling us, the user is telling us, what do you want us to flag? So in this case, I've asked the system to flag any connections to China, and I also want more information on those talent recruitment funding programs. So we present a number of things in the researcher profile. One is activity over time. So we want to look at, for the activity you've elected to flag, has that happened long ago? Is it recent? Is it increasing? With respect to drilling down, all of these bars you can drill down into and you can see the underlying records very easily. We'll also tell you if there are flags on those particular records. I'm going to get into the record preview in a second. You can download all of these records. Now, these are pre-filtered to the year into CSV for export additional analysis, for example, outside of the platform. We will look at their affiliations over time. So in this case, the Charles Lieber case, there were failures to disclose. So one of them was affiliations with entities in China. Based on Dimensions records, you can see not only the affiliations that were used, when they were used, is there overlap with another affiliation, in this case, Harvard, and you can drill down into the records where they use that affiliation, again, for further validation. We're going to look at collaborators. You'll see a lot of things flagged in red here because I have elected to flag information related to China. So these are all of their collaborating institutions in China. Drill down into those records, and you'll notice we're not just looking at publications, we're looking at publications, grants, patents, and clinical trials. Likewise for funders. If we look at patents, if the researcher has any patent filings in Dimensions, we will surface them here as well. In this case, we're flagging China as the jurisdiction in which these patent records were filed. Keywords of interest, very quickly, we're looking for a long list of keywords related to suspected or known talent recruitment funding programs. In this case, it was the 1,000 Talent Program or 1,000 Talent Plan. If I drill down into this number here, I'm going to get, again, this list of records that I can download, but I can also preview the record. So all of this to help make due diligence much more efficient, because you now don't have to go to the publisher's site and look at the record. We're providing you with a record preview. We're showing you what's been flagged. So in this case, 2 funders were flagged, again, because of the China filter that I applied, as well as a collaborating institution that is highlighted in red here. And notably, we're also surfacing the acknowledgement section of this record, so I can quickly look for the reference to the talent recruitment funding program. Again, all of this to help you expedite your review. We also break this down by research field, and we give you substantive information on their co-authors, including how frequently are they collaborating with these other researchers, and vice versa. We're also looking at how many of the co-authors may have publications that reference talent recruitment funding. You can, once you've started a review, starting a review here. You can also add notes to your review. I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. And you can assign a color tag. Once you've completed the review, this is what you'll see. So you will see a reminder of any notes that you've added to that review, any color tag you've assigned. You'll be able to download the PDF. We will also prompt you to download a CSV of all of the underlying records and the flags at the point of review. Again, point in time, super important to document as these entity lists change, things change over time. Once you've completed a review, your review will be, oops, going back to this one. You'll see your completed reviews. You'll be able to see your notes very easily. And if you need to download that PDF again in the future, it'll be available to you. So that's kind of a whirlwind tour of Dimensions Research Security. And with that, I'm going to turn back to Miguel.
So let's go back to talking about moving from reactive to strategic. Our goal here is to talk to you about how we can move beyond citation counts, scan emerging research horizons, and trace the real world journey of the funded work from lab to policy market. But before that, let's look at what does mission-ready research looks like. So mission-ready organizations can assess risk proactively, they can anticipate emerging scientific opportunities, they can connect investments to outcomes, understand the broader research ecosystem, and demonstrate impact with confidence. All of this is sounding a bit like a dream, isn't it? So let's see how we can actually help with this. One of our latest products has been Dimensions Foresight. This is for continuous topic intelligence. We've tackled a multi-source search here that automatically unifies the publications, grants, patents. We also added Crunchbase funding and global news into a single view. And we're uniquely positioned to do that because Dimensions includes the vast majority of this information. We have a huge number of publications indexed in Dimensions. I personally keep being surprised every day I log in. We also have grants coming straight from the funders. We have patents information, clinical trials, policy documents, and so many other data types that could be interesting to look at, but sometimes are just very hard to connect to each other and see the broader picture. There's one single place for your reports with Dimensions Foresight. This replaces the static reports in your folder that you've created a few months ago, but you're not really sure where it is, and you're not sure if it's up to date. And now redoing the whole analysis just takes a huge amount of time, and you're just going to go with the information you had 3 months ago. There's a predictive intent. It extracts these future work statements from these publications in order to surface where a field is heading before it happens. This is probably one of the most interesting bits, definitely one of the most exciting ones that I'm dying to tell you more in a few slides. So first, multi-source topic monitoring. Why is that? In order to connect these fragmented data into a unified intelligence perspective, we need to look at different areas. We need to look at scientific and technical papers. This is where the core intelligence normally is. It's all coming from Dimensions. It includes publications, global grants, researchers, patents, clinical trials. But we also need to look at a broader market context. So we're pulling commercial data, including funding rounds, organization profiles, investor activity, and this all comes from Crunchbase. We have real-time news and web signals. So there's AI-powered discovery that extracts these key entities and funding signals from global news articles and scraped organizational websites. And finally, we add the predictive intent, these future work statements that I teased you about that are automatically extracted from the full texts of scientific publications to show where a field is heading. And one of the reasons that we can do this is because Dimensions have access to the full text of a large part of the publications that we index in the platform. What are the challenges that strategic leaders are currently facing? Three of them that we're highlighting are: organizations say they struggle to identify and act on early signals of emerging research and technology trends. First of all, that identification part tends to be a challenge. But then, even when you know about it, what do you do with that information? Can you really act on the fact that you now have an early signal of this research being an emerging area in a field you're interested in? The second point is that analysts spend an average of 40 plus hours per project manually gathering and processing research and innovation data. That's a lot of work just to put the data together. And maybe that time would be better spent looking at the results of that information gathering process and analyzing and making decisions based on that data. This is what Dimensions Foresight intends to do: reduce the time that you spend putting together the information and facilitate your decisions on the topic. The last point is that leaders lack confidence, or at least what they told us, was that leaders lack confidence in their ability to spot future research opportunities before they become mainstream. So this translates into three main challenges. The first one represents strategic risks. Relying on lagging indicators like the citation velocity leads to strategic blind spots, wasted resources, funding duplicatives, crowded science. You're basically making a decision on whether a paper cited another paper. Don't take me wrong, that is really important. That does show relevance of that academic research. Uh, Research is established as being valuable when it is grounded on other pre-existing validated research, so that we don't always need to be reinventing the wheel. This is the way research works, and we all acknowledge it. It's not It is crucial that research is cited, but it shouldn't be the only angle that we look at it. It brings us to another point, which is the operational sinkhole. There's this manual siloed process that forces highly paid analysts to toggle between four or more tools, drowning in these spreadsheets instead of synthesizing the insights or even thinking about that data to generate the insights. And finally, there's a disconnected context, and this makes high stakes funding bets without a clear link between the academic activity we were talking just a while ago and the commercial opportunity. And that creates a significant financial and competitive risk, because understanding the academic market, understanding the research that is being created in a topic is quite valuable, but it becomes much more valuable when we pair it with the reality of boots on the ground. What is really happening in the market, and how can this research then affect have a real world impact? Let's put it like this. So these leaders need to increasingly understand the full journey of research investments, not just the publication outputs. And it's normal that we focus more on publication outputs because it's very measurable. It is the result from the research written on a document that everyone can read and then cite. Because it's countable, it's tangible, it becomes something very easy for us to measure success against. But there's much more than just the document. The research itself starts with the grant, and then there is the research that is indeed conducted, which then results in a publication, might end up in a patent or a clinical trial. It might have policy impact that is driven by a policy document, and then ultimately might have commercial applications that might create a company and employ people and generate revenue to that company. All of this bringing us back to additional investment in research. So this continuous flywheel is crucial to understand how research works, but also how we perceive research and how we make strategic decisions. So how does foresight work? The first thing you need to do in foresight is to build a topic, and you do it you do it in plain English. So you start by defining that topic, that research area, to an AI agent in foresight. You don't need to be too specific. The agent will guide you through it. We need to find the level of granularity of that topic that isn't too broad, that it becomes just noisy, but isn't too specific, that it still brings some relevant information. And you don't need to bring this in your mind, because the AI agent is going to drive you through the different questions. If it's a topic you're not an absolute expert on, the AI agent is going to suggest a few things and ask you how to frame it. After you've defined that topic, it's going to generate subtopics. So it's going to break down that topic you've defined into individual components that it believes are connected somehow, that you can then analyze individually. And finally, you'll be able to extract insights from that. So it pulls all this data and identifies and highlights the people involved in those topics, the publications, the organizations, the patents, and so on and so forth. So the natural language querying is the first thing you do in that product. But although the AI agent is going to guide you through it, you're still on the steering wheel. You can drive that topic and clustering in the best way you want to fit your goals. Then it goes to an LLM driven topic clustering. So it pulls something between, well, an average number of publications and grants would be between 1,000 and 5,000 publications and grants per topic. This is not mandatory, but this is the average number we've been seeing. And they have been screened by an LLM for relevance. It then clusters into roughly 7 to 15 subtopics, and this exercise of generating a topic can take something between 10 and 20 minutes. That's been our average time to create these initial topics. And then you have that intelligence provided to you in a UI, which I'll gladly show it to you in a bit. But besides the publications, the people, the news articles, organizations, grants, you have this part of future work statements that I was mentioning before. So what is this? We pick up the publications, and at the very and normally in the discussion of the discussion area of the publication, the authors tend to say the next step on this research should be to investigate this or that. Future studies should investigate the role of X in Y, and they highlight what they believe to be the future of research in that topic. So what we're doing with future work statements is we're extracting these sentences, we're clustering them into opportunities, we're then matching them with these topics. And it ends up being as if you, as a user, could have a panel of experts, which are the authors of these papers, telling you what the next steps in the research is, or are in this case, which makes it really interesting because you don't need to be an absolute expert in that topic to have expert opinions. And these opinions are there, they're out there, they're in these papers. All we needed to do was just to pull them together in a way that makes them really relevant to you. But besides the future work statements, we what I would highlight in Foresight is precisely those AI-generated subtopics. It breaks down these massive research areas into digestible, highly specific niches, the cross-source connection, so the unification of all these individual entities into one single cross-entity view, and also the relevance description. You will see on this screenshot on the right side that there's a relevance indication saying if it's relevant, somewhat relevant, and that might sound a bit arbitrary. But when you go into specific entities, for example, if you open an organization and you hover over the relevance description, it will tell you why this organization is relevant. And that's particularly interesting because sometimes a system can say, oh, you should look at this institution. You're like, what for? It doesn't ring a bell. It's not the obvious one. But if it tells you, oh, actually, this news article mentions that this company is investing in this topic in that country and so on, then it becomes clear why that organization specifically has relevance in the topic. And then you can have much more information to realize whether you should contact that institution in order to get to start a collaboration, or if you should contact these people to get some advice and so on. So we've talked about research security, and that is just one part of the picture. But these agencies must also answer, where is science going, which technologies are emerging, which collaborations matter, and where should we invest next. So protecting research is essential, but understanding where it is heading is truly strategic, and that's what we expect Dimensions Foresight to do. So let me show you how Foresight works. This is Dimensions Analytics. And if I go here on the left side, I have an apps area. this is where I will find Foresight. I've opened it here, and this is my landing page. Normally, the first time you land on Foresight, you see a prettier picture with an onboarding workflow telling you how to start using this. In this case, I have a number of topics created already. Each of the rows that you see in this table is a topic I've created. Today, I'm going to tell you about flying networks, this third one I have here. It was the most interesting use case I had from a researcher last month. They were doing research on situations where the cellular network wasn't enough to cope with the number of people wanting to use it because of a specific event. So imagine a lot of people go to a specific location because of an emergency or an event, and the network is not prepared for that. So could we use drones to reinforce that cellular network in order for the service to be fully working? That's what we call flying networks. Um, so I've started describing the topic to this AI agent in Dimensions Foresight. It came up with this final AI generated description. This is the description of the entire topic. It created 11 subtopics, 399 future work statements. It identified 505 companies and almost 6,000 publications in this topic. Within the 11 subtopics that you see here at the bottom, each of them has a title, a description. So if I hover, I see the full description of each of the topics, a degree of relevance on how it relates to the overall description of the topic. And then you see an overview of number of publications, news gathered, people involved in the topic, organizations, grants, patents, and future work statements that you have here. So let me pick one of these, this multi-agent RL for UAV communication. I have an overview of the topic with the number of publications, future work statements, and organizations found. There are some notable entities. These are the entities that score the highest in terms of relevance. You can see that for each of them, I have a bookmark area. So I can save these items. And when I do, they will start showing up here on my saved items list. That's because there will be a lot of information to go through. And it's going to be very hard for you to remember, well, where did I find that one? Was it a person? Was it something else? So you can just save them and then go to your saved items and go through them. The first thing I have here is this list of future work statements. So one of the things that they suggest, that Foresight suggests could be done, is around 3D trajectory and communication design. So future work statements or future work in this area should focus on efficient distributed 3D trajectory design and communication scheduling for practical multiple UAV-assisted data collection systems. And then it explains why it is important, what publication it came from, what are the keywords related to them. And on any of these items, I can just click on it, open and see a full description, full keywords, the publication it came from. If you click there, you'll go straight to Dimensions to see the full metadata of the publication. You have a vast list of future work statements here. It can be exported. You can export this table as an Excel, as a Markdown file, or just open it directly in Claude or ChatGPT. Then there's the full list of publications, again, all linked in Dimensions. There is the list of people that were involved in this topic. And when you click on them, you can see their profiling dimensions, their ORCID, and the publication links as well. The list of news articles that we managed to collect related to this topic, the organizations in question that were involved there. And here you have that relevance description that I've mentioned. So in this case, this is a university, and you see that they've published work in this field. But quite often you will see other institutions like Mitsubishi Electric Research Laboratories. And here you see that they've developed advanced technologies, including AI and machine learning applications relevant to network optimization and autonomous systems, which directly informs multi-agent RL for UAV communication. So here it explains why this company is particularly interesting in this vast list of institutions. We have a full list of grants in this topic with the awarded amount or open amount if the grant is still open. Again, you can click on it and see the full abstract here. You can view the original grant source or view this source in Dimensions. The list of patents, which in this case, because it's a very engineering focus area, there will be a list of patents that is critical to be aware of. Some of these patents are applications that are pending, some others have been granted, some are active. You can see all of that information directly here in Foresight. And finally, if you go on the right, top right corner, you have a list of API keys and API usage. We have not only APIs for Dimensions Foresight, but also an available MCP for Foresight. So actually, you could be using your own LLM, connecting it to Foresight and ask it, hey, what consulting Dimensions Foresight, what are the, and if you take a look at my institution's portfolio or strategic document, where should we proceed with flying networks, or which are the most relevant potential collaborations we could get in the topics we operate the most. And this is how we compare the products that digital science is doing with your existing workflow, especially when you're focused on artificial intelligence. So that was a quick run through on Dimensions Foresight. Now, moving on to Dimensions Publications Links. Publication Links is a dashboard from Dimensions that can help you map the backwards and forward citations of a publication or grant. And it makes it really easy to follow the journey of research from its beginning to practical applications across these commercial, clinical, and policy documents. That's mostly because, as I was saying at the beginning, it's much easier to assess a paper than the adjacent parts of research, mostly because these others are a bit harder to track. And if only we had a system where we could visualize the connections between that research, the publications of that research, and everything else that surrounds it that is linked to it. That's exactly what we're trying to do with Dimensions Publication Links. It's to track your journey from funding to real world impact. You start by you have this diagram here. This is the first thing you see when you go into this document, and in this case we're looking at supporting grants that resulted in a number of publications that were cited by these publications: patents, policy documents, clinical trials, data sets. So you can visually connect these publications to their supporting grants, and then the impact they had on all these other types of entity. And there will be a lot of AI supported summaries, AI generated summaries that explain the performance of a set of publications, the attention, the citations. I'll be able to show it all live in just a bit. So if I go to Dimensions, as I was saying, here on the left side, you have the apps, you access publication links in the same way. So I'm going to open it here. The first thing I need to do is to open a result set. So the first thing you need to do when you're using a dashboard like this is in Dimensions, you run your search here, in this case for publications or for grants. So I would select grants, I would make my search, and then finally I can click on save and export, integrate into an app, and send it to the Dimensions publication links. So after that, I would open publication links, and I now can select my data sets. I'm going to select this one from the Gates Foundation that I've told earlier this week about the reinvented toilet, which is a very interesting project from the Gates Foundation. So what it says is, when I've created the dashboard, what was the query that I used for full transparency? And then it's going to pull all the grants from that data set and the associated publications and all the citing documents. What you see here on this dashboard is a number of quite interesting and eye-catchy visualizations. On the right side, we have the insights area. On the left side, we have the diagram I was mentioning. In this case, we're only looking at 20 supporting grants. They had 93 publications, and they were cited 1,397 times, with 4 patents, 12 policy documents, and 11 data sets. No clinical trials were involved because this was an actual mechanism. This is a quick overview on it, but then here on the right side, you can see who was talking about it. So there was a huge engagement on social media in the United States, also in Korea, in Switzerland as well. I imagine because of so many international organizations being hosted in Switzerland, like the World Health Organization, for example, but in the UK as well. In green, you can see the news and blogs attention, and in yellow, you have the guideline and policy attention. This is information that we get from Altmetric. If I go to the AI summary, I can have a generated summary of the attention here. So what I get on this summary will be an overview of all the attention from all these 93 publications. So rather than having to scroll in Altmetric throughout the 93 publications and understanding what attention these papers got, this is a quick summary, a quick snippet on um, everything that or what everyone is talking about regarding these 93 publications. There's also one on translational impact, focusing more specifically on patents, policy documents. So we see here patent counts. So what do we have to say in terms of the patents coming from the research supported or funded by the Gates Foundation? Policy documents here as well. So this is a quick information about the other societal translational impact that these papers have got. On the very top, we have the usual citation impact, which, as I said before, is still quite important and explains how this research has contributed to the evolving research landscape in this area. On the attention timeline, we have a quick perspective of how attention was accrued to these publications. We're grouping it into social media engagement, guidelines and policies, news and blogs, and other mentions. In the Opmetric platform, you can see much more granular, a much more granular perspective from each individual mention type. But we think that here, because what you're interested on is more of an overview, this grouping might actually be more appropriate. Dying to hear feedback from all of you if you have any. But then you also have some benchmarks. So we say that there were 1,397 citations to these 93 publications. So what? Is that good? Is that bad? Is that enough? What we can see here is that that accounts to 1.37 times the global average. So it has 37% more citations than the average similar paper. And in terms of altmetric attention, it's almost 50% more attention than the average. In terms of patent citations, a bit under, so it's 60% of the global average. At the bottom, finally, you have a full list of those publications. I can select the top 25 rows per page, and you can see the full list of publications, the dimensions badge, the altmetric score, the number of citations, the field citation ratio, which is our normalized metric for citations, and so on. Many other metrics that you can see here. And obviously with loads of options to focus on specific things and filter, search, and configure your table. So the last thing I have to talk to you about is about measuring the reach and influence of your research. And I'm going to focus on a feature we've recently launched called Altmetric Attention Digest. It's actually quite similar to what you've seen there in terms of using AI to give you a summary of the attention of these papers. But in this case, we're focusing on one paper specifically and going much deeper into that paper. The goal of Attention Digest is to quickly give you that perspective of the multiple components that influence attention. Because when we think about attention, that attention can come from social media, but within social media, it can come from multiple places. And what triggered that attention to be so big? Or actually, it could come from patent mentions, or it could come from policies, or it could come from news or blogs. What kind of blogs and what kind of news? And has it been growing or not? What led the research to have these kind of results? This is what the Attention Digest can tell you. And it will show up on the right side of what we call the details page. So rather than showing you these screenshots, let me go into Altmetric and show you how it works. In this case, I'm in Altmetric Explorer. I'm looking for all research outputs within the subject of engineering funded by the Gates Foundation. I'm going to go to research outputs and see the full list of outputs that we have. I'm going to randomly pick the first one, gene drive suppression of mosquito populations in large cages as a bridge between lab and field. And here at the bottom, I see the overall attention. As I was saying, whereas in publication links, you had a grouped attention, in here you have the breakdown of this attention over time. So the first one is attention from X. Here you have the citations. You have attention from news. I'm going to untoggle them as I talk about them so that you see the ones below. Then you have attention from Reddit. Here you have blogs. You have patents, podcasts, YouTube, quickly showing up there, Blue Sky. On the very top in Altmetric, you can actually see the mentions. But in this case, with so many mentions that this paper has received, it's virtually impossible for someone to go through every single mention for every paper you're interested in and drive any meaningful insights from it. So when you are in the summary page of the Altmetrics details page, on the right side, you have the Show Attention Digest button. And this is the attention digest we were talking about. It starts with an overall attention and impact summary, and then it goes to attention source specific analysis. So it starts by giving you just an overview of the impact accrued by, or an attention accrued by this publication. It started in news, X, and Reddit. There was an initial pick driven by widespread reporting of the potential gene drive technology to combat malaria and suppressing mosquito populations. So this is why it was important and why it ended up in the news. Um, the most intense period of discussion was the weeks and months after publications, but the article continued to receive sporadic mentions in subsequent years, with notable activities in 22, 23, and even projections into 24 and 25, indicating sustained interest in the topic of gene drives and their application in vector control. This is the kind of explanation that I wish someone was giving to me when I'm looking at an altmetric details page last year. Um, I used to create them, but it took me a while to actually have to go through all of them. This just makes it so much easier. But then if I'm interested on news, I can see the specific area about news, what outlets were mentioned this article, tell me about some notable mentions, social media here as well, notable mentions, the profiles of the accounts that mentioned it. In terms of blogs, who mentioned it, the patent applications. In this case, there was one patent application filed that mentioned this paper. There were two podcasts that I can see here, and there were many active discussions in Reddit, particularly on science, where the article generated significant interest, and you can see here the mentions there. Now, bear in mind that the Attention Digest is something that keeps improving. We will continue to make tweaks to how it looks. We would really love your feedback. If you want to rate the attention of any digests, you can just have a thumbs up, thumbs down, and it's going to ask you for a bit more information. And that's pretty much it in terms of the digest. We're really keen on collecting everything you have to tell us about it. And with that said, we can wrap up and maybe go through some Q&A. All right, so it seems like we have a question here from the audience. Heidi, I think this one is for you. Uh, how often are restricted entity lists updated? I believe this is on Dimensions Research Security.
Yep. So we update all of the lists weekly, and we provide those lists in the platform so you can actually see what the latest and greatest is.
Mhm. Okay, thanks. I hope that was a good answer. Actually, Heidi, I have a follow-up, which I think is interesting for the audience. How many lists do we currently have? And is it, do we get a lot more? Like, how do they grow?
Thanks, Miguel. We currently have 10 restricted entity lists in Dimensions Research Security. We're going to be adding several more I believe next week, actually. These are all United States lists. These are based on the updated United States Department of War risk matrix.
The new ones, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I see another question coming through. Are there plans to add keywords for more talent recruitment funding programs? I think that's also for Dimensions Research Security. Heidi, can you give us
It
your,
is.
go ahead.
Perfect timing. We just released a significant number of additional keywords related to talent recruitment funding programs based on the National Academies report. So, great question.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions coming through. So I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for your attention today. Our contacts are on the slide, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.